There's a pain in my chest that I can't describe. It takes me down and leaves me there. When I talk to the night, I can feel it still. It creeps inside and meets me there. At least I'm alive. At least I'm alive. Believe me, believe me, believe me, believe me. Ooh, I'm coming back again.
So we're in upstate New York right now doing a mushroom hunt for things like chaga and reishi. And just being out here in the forest, it got me thinking a little bit about this idea that for you to grow higher, you also have to grow deeper roots. And what I'm going to explain to you is something that took me years to understand. So most people, most of us, say in society, we tend to believe that we want to grow as high as we can. We want to grow very, very high. But in reality, to support that structure, there has to be roots. There has to be a root system. So take something like being successful. For there to really be a root system for success, I hate to say it, but there probably should have been a series of missteps and problems and maybe even, maybe even a little bit of pain along the way. And what this pain does and the missteps does is it actually provides roots, okay? It helps you to be grounded and creates roots. And so let's say that you want to be successful by the time you're 40 or 50, like very successful. Then usually what's happened is along that journey, there's been these little, in effect what it is that there's a failure of character. There's a failure of the mind. And it's a combination of a number of different failures. It's seeing the world idealistically and being the kind of person where you need to make a fake fairy tale about what the world is for you to be okay with the world. True love for the world is seeing a balanced world, seeing a world that has good and bad in it and loving it anyway, not making it this sort of sticky sweet world where then that's your only way that you can love the world. You can see the dark parts of the world and still love it. So that's one of it, right? So just the tax that you will pay, the pain that you will pay for the fact that you've seen the world inaccurately, right? And you're going to pay a very, very deep tax on that. So that's one of those kind of roots that you get because you have this fairy tale view of the world, and then boom, you just get bang, 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 and it just viciously punches you in the face. So that's one example. Another one is simply being out of integrity with yourself and how that manifests towards others, right? So A, you're lacking discernment. B, you're not in integrity with yourself. You don't have a clear, conscious will with yourself. And so what winds up happening is that you're not exerting your will properly and you're messing up your life. And then you see what happens when you do that. You see what happens when you're out of integrity. And this will manifest itself both in obvious events where it's just very, very obvious, you had one lapse of integrity. But then at the same time, there's also little small lapses where you're planting seeds that sprout later. Like you make these little mistakes of integrity with yourself that sprout later down the line. And you just see how vicious it is. Another one is just your mood and control of your state. You allowing yourself to go into dark spaces and then realizing that you're kind of manifesting that externally into all these other dark aspects. Another one of them is just simply coming at peace with yourself. So being at peace with yourself and who you are and how that peace inside of yourself manifests externally as well. And in effect, what you have, and you could really say this, is that if you look at your life right now, it is often, not always, and I don't want to get into like blaming people for random events because I don't believe in that, but in many ways, or for things outside their control, but a lot of life, at least predominantly, despite these fluke cases, you and your life is a direct mirror of what's going on in your mind, the integrity of your mind, the discernment of your mind, the peace in your mind, the ability to plant the right seeds in your own mind, and then that happens in the outside world. So from that standpoint, realize that you're not really supposed to have success until you've undergone that process, because what happens is that if you're propped up in some capacity, if you're propped up and you're getting success without going through that process, then what happens is that you're not really learning about how to have integrity. You're not learning what the world is. It's blocking you from your growth. That if in any capacity that you're propped up, it is blocking you from that growth. And the world is put here to allow you to have that growth. Your journey is put here to allow you to have that growth. So coming from that standpoint, you want to grow the roots, a really, really powerful root system in direct proportion to how high you grow. And I don't want to be some dorky little shrub with a giant root system, and I don't want to be some giant tall tree without a root system. Ideally, I want to be somewhere in the middle. I want a direct proportional, kind of symmetrical look of growth to roots. And so what I've seen is that life is not necessarily meant to be happy all the time. Life is meant to have these little bumps in the road. And at that point, there's this expression, they say you can either get bitter or you can get better. And when you get bitter in one of these situations, that's where you're saying, I'm at the effect, it's not my fault, I'm a victim, and I'm angry about this, and I just want reality to be different. I just want to be that tall tree. I resist and resent growing more roots. I want to avoid that process somehow and just have the height of the tree. And so this is what you'll see, and I've seen this for many years, where maybe you have love for somebody and you put them into a good life situation. You say, you know what, let me use my resources to help raise you into a better life situation. But that person hasn't learned things yet about their life integrity, or about, how the world works, or about the peace of their mind, how that manifests, the peace or chaos of their mind, and how that manifests into a peaceful or chaotic environment, and about all the seeds that they're planting in their mind that manifest externally. They haven't had a chance to do that. And so what you do is you put them in this bizarre situation where it's like giving a bazooka to a child, and the child doesn't understand how to use that bazooka. It just starts blowing everything up and killing everybody. And then if you yell at the child and say, why did you do that? Why did you blow everybody up? Why did you harm all those people? And the child's like, look, you gave me this toy. What's the problem here? I was having fun with it. I didn't know. And so the child hasn't had that learning curve, right? Well, in many ways, if you bring somebody up into a better life, let's say you have a significant other and you've made a lot of money and you've made your life just beautiful. You have this opulent, beautiful life. If you have a significant other who hasn't been through that process, or maybe came up in a chaotic environment, what are the chances that they're going to be able to allow that software to kind of go into their own inner matrices of the hardware in their mind? Are they going to really let that software take root? Probably not. They're not going to be able to. And so that's where, whatever's if you have a significant other, whatever's in their mind, the chaos in their mind is now going to begin to manifest into your mind, because like they say, you become who you hang out with. You mirror their paradigms, you mirror their belief systems, you tend to mirror their mood, you tend to mirror their standards, and that'll start to get in you. And then you start having these arguments like, why are you doing that? I worked so hard to build this. I need to work right now, baby, and so on and so forth. And they can't take that because they're not in that paradigm. Likewise, let's say, for example, that you run a business and you have staff, and you've been through that paradigm. You've made mistakes. You've suffered the consequences. You've seen the downsides. You've had your dark nights of the soul. And so, you have a staff member, and they're working with you because they want to learn from your leadership. They're not at a point where they can generate a large organization, and they just haven't reached that point. And then if you put them into that position to where they're getting all the perks that you have, and they're living the upside of the life that you've built, but they haven't had to experience the downside. The cool part about that is, that's why in some capacity somebody does work for you, so that you can advance them more than they'd advance themselves. It's meant to be synergistic, so that's a good thing where you can pull them up to your paradigm. But the downside is that if you assume that they have your standards, your peace of mind in your head, your vision for what's trying to be done, your belief system, your degree of integrity, and so on and so forth, if you assume that they have that, well, why are you doing that? They haven't been through that process. Would you have appreciated it if your parents gave you, the family car keys and just gave them to you and let you start driving around and crashing and everything, and then you start ruining the neighborhood, and then they come out and yell at you and are resentful to you? Whose fault was that? That was the parents' fault for giving you the keys. Realize that, first of all, your job is to endure these lapses of integrity and to see the consequence of it. It is to endure the chaos in your mind, and to watch how that chaos manifests in your life. And now your life is a perfect mirror of that. Your job is to endure planting bad seeds in your mind in terms of bad thoughts, and planting bad seeds in your life, and later watching those pop up, right? And the sad part is, a lot of time, even when you're doing better, some old seed that you planted when you were in a lower paradigm pops up, and you're like, why? It's like, well, you're on a journey, and that was something that you planted back then. No different than you might have planted something positive years ago, and you're in a different paradigm. And that can also help you, right? But we are to whatever extent living the lives that we built. So understand that this is something that you've got to put yourself through when you're frustrated in life. Realize all that is digging roots. But again, it's growing the roots. but you can get bitter or you can get better. That's on you to decide if you want to get bitter or better. That is completely and utterly on you. Do you want to get bitter or do you want to get better? You've got to decide. Is this going to grow the roots, or are we just going to sit here like in a salty fest and just get all mad and salty, and then there's no roots being grown at all, right? So realize that you've got to go through that, but also realize that in terms of the people who you're leading, you've got to sit there with them. If you want to have a synergistic relationship where they're adding to you as well, you've got to sit down with them and explain, here are my belief systems, here are my paradigms, here are my standards, here are my values, here is where we're clearly going. Do you buy into this vision? And then you've got to be clear that they may not have the intuitive knowledge that you have to be able to go to that place with you. And so you've got to build systems that help them to basically be the beneficiaries of the lessons and the lifestyle that you've built. And so they can actually be a part of that and benefit from it. But the system itself is meant to install those values, right? Like if you build a system to where it helps to instill those values, it instills those boundaries, it instills that integrity, it instills them planting those correct seeds, it instills that peaceful state of mind. The systems that you built have to instill that. Otherwise, what you've got to realize is that you do have to draw a boundary, because you could love someone or care about them, but what happens is that by allowing them to operate at a lower standard, you are creating a farce of an ecosystem that is fake, right? And so, it's like an animal out here. Let's say that you had a wolf out here or a bear out here. It's in perfect harmony with its ecosystem. That's what it's meant to be. But if what you're doing is domesticating the bear or domesticating the wolf, you're turning it into some weird, bizarre version of itself that it's not really supposed to be, which is like, maybe a chihuahua. You're turning this thing into a chihuahua. And now you're sitting here as a wolf and then wondering why this other character you're involved with is a chihuahua, and you're mad that they're not going to be a wolf when you're the one who turned them into that. So this is something that I've learned. And, realize that, say that you take someone who's just in a really, really bad state of life and you put them in a better environment. Not only is that probably not going to pan out, they're probably going to hate you by the end of it, because it's like as if you took a wolf, domesticated it temporarily and gave them a bunch of stuff and made the wolf lose its muscle, made the wolf lose its instincts, and then you threw it back in the woods and then wondering why the wolf's mad at you. So realize that here's the basic thing, like in recap, you yourself have to go through life and experience it and allow yourself to learn lessons and not to get bitter, but to get better and allow the roots to grow. You've got to go through that. Okay, that's number one. Number two, you've got to then either be around other people that are at that level that have been through that so that you can be synergistic, or what you can do is you can bring around people that are lower than where you're at. They're not as far along the journey as you, God forbid, but then you've got to build systems, and you can't be mad when they make mistakes. You just can't be. And realize that at a core level, not only will they make mistakes, but spiritually, they're not at a point where they can even let land the perks yet. Like the perks are confusing them and messing with them. And I mean, I could talk for hours about this, but it's creating bizarre ego structures in their mind. It's creating a stagnance in their mind and a domestication in their mind. And I mean, we could talk for 100 hours about this, and I've got a lot of content coming about it later in the year. We're going to break this down shred by shred, but I'm going to try to stay focused here on this main point. You're putting things into their mind that are not meant to be there. You're disrupting their inner ecosystem. It's not good. And so you have to be responsible for those systems. If somebody entrusts you with your leadership, you have to have clear boundaries. Here's the system that we're working with. If you don't fit in with this system, if you're not willing to be elevated by the system, I'll talk to you about it. I'll give you a warning. I'll give you a clear warning. We'll write it even down so that we can't pretend that we didn't give the warning. But if they can't be within that system, you have to love them by letting them go, okay? And this is the basic idea of building that synergy. Now, you might say, well, why don't you just always have just nothing but A players around you? Well, you can't afford to hire all A players. Who can? I mean, unless you've got hundreds of millions of dollars, A players often their billing rate is $10,000 an hour, $25,000 an hour. That's not usually likely. But the idea is that if you can build those systems, you can bring in people at a normal rate, and you can actually help to elevate them. They can come up through your organization, learn from you, and then they can help you to scale your business. Or if that doesn't wind up happening and maybe they don't choose to elevate, that's also fine, because they can also be an amazing cog in the machine that you're building, that you're benefiting from. So don't complain about that. But these are basic understandings that have come hard for me, because I'm really into this whole idea of just helping people without expecting anything in return. And I'm really into this whole idea of just like finding somebody who really, really struggles and helping them to blossom and lifting them up. And I get my own little ego kick out of that by seeing them go through that process and seeing them elevate. But what I found was over time, it always created insane amounts of chaos. It was never like you're building a bridge and then the bridge stood the test of time. It was always like you built this beautiful bridge or building, with them collaboratively, and then it would just go and it would blow down. And in many cases, with people that I've had this experience with, they would go on their own journey later, and they might call me a decade later, and they'll say, Owen, thank you for that opportunity. I was mad at the time. I had no idea. Now I'm the person who is managing people, and then they're doing to me what I did to you. Just like what we as children, we do to our parents, and they say, you hate your parents when you're a kid because they took away the toy or the video games or the candy, and then later you're a parent, and your kids are screaming at you, and you call them, and you're like, I love you, Mom and Dad, I didn't know, because they're just not at that point, right? So in recognizing this in a weird way, I'm kind of trying to bump you forward a little bit, because I'm kind of bonding with you at a level that some people, I could be bonding with you and you're at this level or beyond the level that I've gotten to, but I might also be kind of bonding with you at a level that you haven't even hit yet. Like, we're kind of bonding on how people can kind of suck and that we have to take responsibility, but I'm kind of the person that sucks, right? But I'm saying this to you more so that you can see it from the other side, right? Like, you're seeing it from the other side of the challenge, the other side of the issue and the challenge, and then you can begin to identify as what it would be like to be somebody who's gone through that and then manage other people. And now you can say to yourself, well, wait a minute, I don't want to be that kind of a problem for somebody. I want to begin to advance, and I want to begin to expand, and I want to just do a lot better, okay? So that's the cool thing with life and personal growth, is that we can begin to understand our lives better and begin to understand, who you are, what this place is as far as a test, as far as an education center, as far as the ultimate journey, okay? We're out here picking mushrooms. There's even, I don't do this, but there's even psilocybin over here. And they, my friends put in the thing. I'm trying to get lion's mane and reishi and chaga, and I'm like, get that out of here. But, a lot of my friends are very into it, and basically everybody but me's into it. I'm Mr. SquarePants. But the point is, it's like, people might do, say, psilocybin to have a journey, and they take that journey, and they want to have like a trip, but wake up, you're on the psilocybin journey now, right? Grab that, we'll grab that psilocybin. They found some amazing mushrooms here. Do we have the box? We'll bring over the whole bag too. We'll show the whole bag. But anyway, we're going to be doing some really, really good videos on this quick mushroom hunt. Well, here's the ones that I'm into. We'll get into that. We can even get the 90 lens on that a little bit too. And then I guess that's is this psilocybin or like a variation of it?
In it, yeah.
Okay, got it. Would psilocybin fans recognize this? They know it is. They're excited.
Wild.
Okay, guys, I'm finally ready to have the journey, to have the awakening. Oh, I'm gonna finally wake up. Okay, so and then they'll clickbait this later and show a picture of it and say I'm doing it, right?
One scene.
Oh no, very quick too. As a side note of humor, I just got busted in a hotel because I had loose leaf tea. No, wait, take it back because I don't want to look at the punchline. They hit me up and they say, Owen was smoking weed in the hotel room, and there's weed everywhere in the hotel room, and I've never smoked weed in my life. We couldn't figure out what it was. And as it turns out, I left loose leaf tea that was a little bit in the garbage can of the hotel, and they thought it was weed, and they charged me $250. So there you go, right? Yeah. Okay, but anyway, so.
Karma,
but yeah, so it is. I mean, that's what it is, right? It's hitting back. But anyway, so a couple mushrooms here. We're gonna do a real proper video on this. We're out here. We're up in upstate New York. We came here specifically to do this. We're gonna talk a little bit about that. But Shane, even for you, by the way, because how old are you?
30.
Okay, you're 30, right? So I'm 42, right? So you've watched me come up and you built a business, and I know that you deal with this as well, even with your team. But even in hearing it, like, I bet you half of you, is identifying with the person who's trying to pull other people up, and then half of you is like, I'm kind of that person sometimes as well, because even I am that person who messes up as well, and my failures and the things that I've done wrong do impact the people around me, and I do see these little things pop up, and I just wish that I could learn this faster. Like, I wish there was some way that I could expedite all these horrible lessons and do it faster. But regardless, it takes however long it takes. But then at the same time, I think videos like this, like, did this maybe give you some insight on like how you could expedite that process yourself, just thinking a little bit about it? Like,
immediately. It was illuminating the parts of my brain that were like, okay, I'm doing okay there, where I'm calling out myself, where if someone doesn't step up, I'm calling them out, giving them a come to Jesus. But I'm also like the other 50%, like you said, I'm like, oh, I see the parts where I could have easily gone down a landslide if I kept doing that behavior by not stepping it up and realizing the opportunities that were given to me. Like, even coming here to do this with you, I was like, it would be much easier to not do it. It'd be like, oh, don't get on the plane and fly, and then you only have 2 more weeks, and then you got to go fly somewhere else. I'm like, I prefer to build my business, but I'm like, I gotta do it. Because if I don't do it, it shows my brain also, beyond even just the opportunity, it shows my brain bad behavior. Oh, I can just not go, and I might not see that seed planted, how damaging that was later on down the line.
That's actually very true. I'm going to predict that, so cheers to that. I like that. So, okay, so, and me too. I mean, there's people that I deal with that are at a level where I've had these like really bad moments where I'm dealing with somebody who's, they've got a business doing billions of dollars, or maybe I've dated somebody at a very high level, and that's where I've really been exposed. You know, I've had that process of dealing with people that were a little out of my league, and then I mess up, and then I get exposed, and I feel stupid, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as, again, you get better, not bitter, and you don't make this thing in your mind of like, why didn't I just get to keep that opportunity? Oh, that sucks, and you know, things like that. Like when I started doing high-end clients at one-on-one, and you know, they compensate me beautifully. There was times that years ago that I messed that up, and I messed up beautiful opportunities that could be worth $500K in a year or a lot more. And I'm, you know, at that time it was $500K, and literally like the pain of that, I've got to go home and just put my face in my palms, or maybe I'm dating somebody who's at a really high level. Like, and I'm not just talking looks wise, because you know that's one thing, but like somebody who both, you know, you're both attracted, but also has the intellect and the spiritual alignment, and you really like them, and you maybe get a little bit needy and you act the fool, and you're like, you know, they're kind of a little less needy than me, and they're kind of a little bit at a higher level than me, and I kind of mess this up. And you can be mad about it and say, oh, they don't understand me. Or you can say, no, wait a minute. This, you know, life is the ultimate psychedelic trip. It's going to expose your failings. It's going to take them. It's going to rub them in your face. And then you have the choice to get bitter or better. That is on you, okay? So that's what I'm trying to get at here. I'm trying to both get you to realize this from a position of being the person leading others, also being somebody leading yourself, and also somebody who might be kind of messing up right now, and putting yourself on the other side of that conversation and seeing how that feels, and to help you to maybe be pulled magnetically towards the other end of that equation. So any other thoughts you guys have?
Yeah, I would say one last thing too is I'm actually addicted to getting exposed. The more I get exposed, the happier I am, especially if it's on little things. Like one time you called me out because you did a crazy event, I brought some product to it, and everyone came out, like a flock of like 50, 60 people popped to the back, got to try my product, and then I didn't have any product to sell. And you're like, bro.
Yeah, they're mad they couldn't get it.
They're literally mad at me. And how much lifetime value of all of the clients there I just lost to only get like 5 or 10.
How many of them could also not benefit from that and not actually get the advantages.
Exactly. So you called me out on it immediately. You said, bro, why did you, like, that was so stupid.
And what that is it's a form of, that's the artistry that I also have, where if you're more into the artistry side and the spiritual side, and then you're so in love with your product and just seeing people smiling, and then you forget that actually in reality, if they don't invest into you, they're probably going to lose out anyway. And that's also, by the way, and this is a great point to leave off on, is that for the people who have not been through growing the roots and not gone through that investment process, if you put them into a beautiful life situation, because they haven't had the chance to invest it in the way that you have, they often say you have to give in order to open the vessel to receive.
Right.
So in other words, the roots, you know, when you've been through these experiences and now all of a sudden you are up in some, whether it's a fly crib or amazing, you know, dating life or amazing travel life or spiritually, whatever it is, once you get to that point, you can let that land because of the fact that you've been through something to get there, you've given to it. And that's an incredible point to leave off on, because that there to where, yes, someone gets a sample, okay, that's cool.
Right.
But then at the same time, if they actually would have maybe invested, you know, God forbid they put $100 down to actually help themselves, and then all of a sudden they invest in it, they would view it differently. And I know people who bought your product, and literally what happens is that they say to me, they call me and they rave about it. Why? Because they've actually invested in it. But that's the same point here with the roots, is this idea, and it's funny because now people watch this like, is this all just a setup for that? But it really, it's an impromptu thing, I swear on God. But either way, but it's still, I still think it makes sense. But really, it's that if you have been through that process of building the roots, that's going to allow you to enjoy the fruits of that, and to where you let it land, and to where you say, I want to still live an awesome life. I don't want to have my life go into chaos. But if you have people around that maybe haven't been through that process, and maybe they got caught up in things like, well, I'm mad about this, and like, you didn't like say hi to me, and like, plus like, I didn't want to have to do this other thing, and they get annoyed. Their inner software is not ready. Like they're not ready to let the wind land yet, right? And so the inner software they have is built for a chaotic life. And so even if you put them in peace, they're not ready to let that land. But again, in hearing that, it's not about going, yeah, they're all not ready for peace like me, right? What's it say in the Bible? It says, don't complain about the chip in your brother's eye when you got a plank in your own eye. And so we're trying to put you on the other side of that equation. Wake up, realize you're doing it. I do it too. He does it. We all do it. Everybody's doing it. But the more that we can advance, the better life's going to be. It's just going to be awesome. Realize this basic lesson, and so much of what we teach is based on the set of ideas, showing you how to get success, but showing you, more importantly, how to go through the process and how to handle the bumps in the road to get to the point that when it does land, life is going to be awesome. Anyway, I'm going to now go back to getting the mushrooms, and half the comments on here are just going to be about that. After everything I said, after all the stuff we said, they're like, just give him that, right?
Zoom in on it
but
again.
again, what do they even say with that stuff? They can even say that too, that they say unearned consciousness, they can say is worthless. And so even for many of my friends who love this stuff, at the same time, if it's unearned, you got to plant the roots for that too. So this metaphor goes deep, okay? But anyway, okay, so prepare for prepare for the comments. We're going to go explore. We're going to have a great, amazing video out about this journey and what we did here. And remember, life is a journey. It's going to have bumps in the roads, grow the roots, increase the tree, help lead others to the promised land as well, create systems, make everybody better around you, hold yourself accountable first, and
that I can't describe. I close my eyes. The days the same. There's a dawn in my sound when I hear my name. It makes me high. I feel ashamed.
so everybody has the same 24 hours in a day. And some people have more talent and more opportunity. Some people have less talent and less opportunity. But the truth is we've come far enough as human beings, as collectively and as a species, that everybody can be very, very successful, whether that's health, wealth, relationship, or higher purpose. Anybody who tells you that you can't be successful, probably they are falling into a pit of hell themselves, and they want to drag you in there with them. And they get energy from that. They get energy from vandalizing your spirit and destroying you. And they're going to feed you a lot of BS about how you can't be successful. But rather than going with that, because these people hate you, recognize that and then say to yourself, how can I learn what it is that successful people do with their 24 hours in a day, and how can I begin to replicate a little bit of that? So I've been very lucky. I'm sitting here right now, I'm 42 years old. We're doing a little bit of canoeing out here in Acadia, Maine. We're kind of wrapping the day up. We've had a long day. It's been a pretty great day. And I was pretty lucky because I got into the niche of attraction when I was 22. And because of that, I got to be around a lot of people that, like, to be honest, in a million years, I never should have been able to be around. Presidents of countries, Hollywood movie stars, business owners that make billions of dollars. I've been around the best, and as well as the lowest of the low. I've seen everything from the top to in between. People who you watch on television, I've worked with many of them, many of the top social media influencers, and many of the people that are just the most sad cases that you've ever seen and that you think could never make it. I've just spent my life around this. So the difference is so utterly obvious to me because I've spent my life doing that. But if you've spent your life doing other things, you know, you have your job and it's not just like a success coach or something like that, it might not be as obvious to you. So that's kind of what I'm trying to share with you. I'm trying to show you what I observed from being around people that frankly were, you know, light years out of my league status-wise, light years out of my league money-wise, and just what I observed from them, what I replicated from them and modeled from them, and then how my life got a lot better. So the first one that I see, and it's just so obvious when you're around successful people, they'll call it a value for their time. And that value for their time, I think, is something that people sort of hear passively and they underestimate it. But successful people will not allow their time to be wasted because they understand that's the one asset that you can't just go purchase more of technically. You actually can purchase more by you know, getting assistants and maids and people that will work with you or help you with your health and so on. So you can sort of buy to an extent, but you can't tangibly just stay how you are now and just buy more time. So they get that. So their time is very, very valuable to them. Generally speaking, you'll see with very wealthy clients, you know, if we have an appointment for noon, we start right at noon and we end at 1 p.m. It's done. And even if I say to them, hey, do you want some bonus time? They probably don't even want that bonus time. Why is that? Because their time is so incredibly valuable to them. And they have an entire structure they've built, and bonus time wouldn't go with that. Kind of interesting how that works, right? Now, going from there even deeper, they're able to audit the value of things at a much, much higher level, how they're using your time and where the value is. And when you talk to somebody who's very successful, it's sort of a funny feeling. And I remember feeling this in my early 20s. It was when I was first encountering it, where it feels like they're just looking right through you. It's like this sort of image that you're trying to put on, this sort of halo effect that you're trying to create. They see through that so much. And in fact, with people at a very high level, if you even try to put on a halo effect or you try to kind of market to them or things like that, they usually see through it in 2 seconds. So it's funny because one of my mentors in attraction, I remember he said to me, Try to be around the people that are the most attractive, because if you calibrate to being around people who are less attractive, when you meet somebody who is more attractive, you'll blow it, because it's a little bit different. The calibration's a bit different. So he would actually encourage me not to go to mediocre bars and clubs, because at the highest levels, it's going to mess up your calibration. Well, I've also seen this with very wealthy clients who I've had where, if I say anything with the intention to try to impress, they usually see right through it. So you've got to be very, very clear when you're dealing with very wealthy or high-end clients, high-ticket clients. You've got to be very, very aware with what exactly your value is. Realize that you're not going to fool them of anything. They're going to see right through you, that they're going to know exactly where you're coming from. You can't BS them. And then what you've got to do instead is put a major focus on exactly what your value is and hyper concentrate that and give them a hyper concentrated dose of value, while in no way being self-qualifying and just being completely indifferent to the outcome. So, if I have a one-on-one wealthy client, they come to me, we set the time, we meet at the time, I give them a mega dose of the exact value they want. I help them to solve their problems at a rapid fire rate. They want the best of the best. I am obliged to be the best of the best. I come in there, I solve the problem, we're in, we're out. Okay, that's exactly how it goes. And this is the same thing if you're attracting somebody who's at a very high level. Maybe they've dated professional athletes, billionaires, movie stars, celebrities, as cheesy as it sounds, club promoters, because a lot of them are actually pretty high status. People that are very physically attractive themselves, they've dated everybody. So if you go in there trying to self-qualify yourself, they're going to see right through that in 2 seconds. So you've got to know, you've got to be very, very clear exactly what your value is and present that at a very, very clear level. Now, you'll find people that are poor or people that are unsuccessful, they're bought into a lot of very false and bizarre concepts of what value is. So a simple one, for example, in attraction would be, they think it's their looks or their money. And the reason why they just don't get it, they're not able to audit what their value is that they don't realize you will never compete with looks and money. You can't. Now, there's probably about 0.1% of people watching this, could even be you, who actually could compete on looks and money, by the way. If you're a real billionaire, or if you're at maybe 500 million net worth, you can probably compete in money. Even at 100 million net worth, you're probably not going to compete with money. At 500 million net worth, you might begin to be able to compete with money. If you are truly like, a 500,000 to 1 million followed male model, for example, if you're a guy, well then yeah, you can begin to compete on looks. Okay, you can. But if you're somebody, you have to understand, I've lived in LA for 20 years, I live in Hollywood. If you're making, say, $1 million a year, you're thinking that that's going to help you. It's not, because the person who it is that you want to attract, they've been around people worth 500 million. So you're not going to win like that. You're going to look like a complete loser. Likewise, you think that because you hit the gym and you got a little bit in shape, that's going to help you. Understand that most likely the shape that you're going to get into in the gym, they've also been attracted to and dated people that are being paid just for their looks. So unless you're going to become someone who's paid on their looks, that's not going to be the value. You're not going to play at an elite level by doing that. So what you have to do is you've got to begin to audit yourself and say to yourself, where are you competing? This is exactly what I've done as well with my seminars business. I understand that if I'm going to compete just on popularity or mainstream approval, I've talked to crowds that are 1,000 people that I've drawn to my rooms. 1,000 people is a huge amount. There's not a lot of coaches that can get 1,000 people to come and see them. But a guy like Anthony Robbins is getting, I've been to Unleash the Power Within. I think the one that I went to last was 18,000 people. So you're talking about orders of magnitude higher. And I think Tony's probably talked to 50,000 or 100,000 person crowd. So this idea that I'm going to compete on popularity, that's not where my niche is. That's not my hyper concentrated dose of value. So I am setting myself up to fail by competing like that. Instead, what I've got to do is I've got to determine where the value that I have is and dominate that niche. I've got to be willing to say, look, it'd be great to be a male model who's got $500 million and to be a self-help coach who has 20,000 person crowds and all that stuff. As great as that would be, at a certain point, you've got to put in the work and you've got to make a decision and realize that's not necessarily going to be you. If it can be you, by all means, look, if that's you, by all means, don't let me hold you back. If you're a real male model, if you're really looking to making 500 mil, maybe go do that. But in truth, I've also coached NBA players. I've coached other professional athletes. I've coached people who make $500 million and more. And I've coached everybody, and they still struggle with things like attraction because they didn't learn the base level social skills. So even then, they still wind up struggling. You see what I'm saying? Like, you're thinking that there's this other level where you wouldn't have to figure out what your value is, and that you could just sort of do whatever society says value is. You could just be that, so that you wouldn't have to think, and so that you could be mentally lazy. You're hoping and wishing for that because you are mentally lazy and you can't figure out where your lane is, and you're wishing for that. That's not going to happen. You're going to live your life in poverty. You're going to live your life with a really lame social life. You're not going to get attraction from a lot of people. It's going to super duper suck because you're being mentally lazy. So you've got to be able to look through even yourself and say, where is the value here? And the value at a base level is the uniqueness, the emotions, the connection, the ability to be your best self at the highest level, the best version of you. Figure out exactly what that is and ride that lane to the hilt. That's why you'll see me in my seminars company. I don't hold back. Like, whatever it is that I am, I hyper concentrate that at the highest level. I stretch my imagination and sort of I stretch the full creativity of that concept of what my natural inclinations are, and then I build on strength. This was something from Peter Drucker. He says you can only build on strength. Yes, try to fill in your weaknesses to an extent. Maybe, I don't know the ratio, maybe it's 10 or 20% try to fill in your weaknesses. If you have a really, really bad weakness, well then absolutely fill that in, but you've got to be honest with yourself. Now, that's you determining what, the kind of people who are your intended audience, whether that's in business, whether that's in attraction, whether that's in friends, whatever it is, you've got to start being honest with yourself about what that is. And if you can't be honest about that and you want to be everything to everyone, kind of like Tony Robbins, which is truly remarkable that he's able to do that. If you want to be everything to everybody, I believe you're probably going to fail. And also keep in mind that people like Anthony Robbins existed prior to social media, where he would use a company called Gunther Renker who created things like proactive skincare and things like that, to buy himself airtime, and he's like the guy, right? He was doing Personal Power too. He was the guy. You're not going to see people like Michael Jackson selling 30 million albums of Thriller in the future, not because there's less music being consumed, but because of what's called the long tail phenomenon. The long tail phenomenon is the idea that there's just as much music being consumed, but it's millions of different creators, and it's all split apart. It's not just a small handful of record companies in a record store, and they get to choose and be the kingmakers. There's nobody choosing the kingmakers anymore. You are not going to be chosen by a kingmaker. Understand that, and understand that you've got to figure out where you fit in that long tail phenomenon and dominate your niche. So there's the ability for everybody to be successful, but you've got to really log in. Now, if you think about me, let's look, for example, at my seminars business. Okay, so I never got to be Anthony Robbins, so I don't run a 9-figure business. Do I wish I ran a 9-figure business? Yes. Will I get to be able to run a 9-figure business? I believe I will if I live long enough. Who knows? There's a lot of things that could go right or wrong. I have no idea, to be honest with you. I have the skill set to do it. We will see. I'm probably more of an artist than I'm an entrepreneur. So, if you're more of an artist, you're probably going to be stuck around the 7 or 8-figure mark because you're more of an artist. You care more about the craft. I care more about being out here canoeing with my children and having beautiful moments and loving life than I do just sort of sitting at home mastering my next search engine optimized video using vidIQ and pandering to the algorithm and having a video release schedule related to the algorithm and all that kind of stuff. I don't care so much about that. So as a result, I may get stuck at 8 figures, or because I also like to push edgy subject matter, we could wind up seeing the whole thing go away, and that's almost happened before. It could easily happen as well, and I'm okay with that. So understand that you've got to first realize, like, are you somebody who just cares about money, or are you somebody who also cares about art, who cares about lifestyle? I care about art and lifestyle more so than I do money by a huge margin. To me, money is a means to an end. Money is so that I can come here and go canoeing and make cool videos with you and make art. It's not just to have money and just dive around it in a bathtub, even though I think that's comedic and some of my buddies are into that. There's like a funny thing about that. And that's actually a cool thing if somebody wants to do that, because you can learn from it. So that's amazing. Those are some great people to learn from. And in their case, they also shouldn't just try to make art. They also shouldn't just try to live lifestyle. If they truly just love money, they should focus on that. So you've got to figure out what it is that you're optimizing for, if you see what I'm saying. Determine what it is that you are good at, the way that your life is, optimize for that, and then ride that to the frickin' hilt is really the key to life, okay? And I think I'm gonna turn around here. We'll start heading back because it's getting dark. Okay, so next up, so basically looking at your natural tendencies, building on strength, looking at where your niche is, knowing the kind of people who you're able to attract, riding that lane in a major, major way is basically the key to life, okay? Now, next up, you've also got to look at other people and really see where the value is. So in other words, if you're going to operate at a high level, you've also got to be able to see through the different halo effects that people do to kind of put you into their frame. So whenever you're looking at somebody, you also want to have that same skill of being able to see exactly where they would fit in. If you're running a business, that would be where they fit into your organization. Where are they actually strong? And they're going to tell you that they can do everything and that they're a Swiss Army knife, and there's a very small number of people who are Swiss Army knives, and that's incredible, in which case, set them to do that. But for most people, they've got a couple unique major skills, and you've got to be able to focus on that aspect and put them in those positions. Likewise, if you have different coaches or different friends or different people who you're dating and things like that, health, wealth, relationship, higher purpose, whatever it is, you've got to be aware of this and see past the packaging on the label. A basic understanding of that would be, I'm into health supplements. I haven't been sick in 10 years at this point, or just shy of 10 years. And when I look at a health supplement, people will say to me like, I'm getting, the super energy supplement, or the go to sleep supplement, or the relaxation supplement, or whatever supplement, right? Like, it's the magic supplement. And I'm like, look, I love the name. Every supplement should have a name. Absolutely. Every supplement needs to have a name. So, and they should do that because frankly, the average person doesn't know how to look through. But for me, what I do is I go immediately to the back label. Then I ask myself, where is that supplement sourced from? Then I ask myself, there's so many things I ask myself. Are other supplements that I'm taking containing the same ingredient? Is this a wild, or is this farm raised? Like, what actually is it? My buddy Shane, he runs a company called Black Magic Alchemy. Why do I like his business? He sells chaga because I've actually seen him plucking the mushrooms. I've seen the mushrooms themselves, so I have a higher degree of trust for it. Shane also, he does things like working on the alcohol extractions that he uses. He uses a better quality alcohol, that kind of a thing. His alcohol, which extracts the supplement, it actually, it doesn't taste terrible because it's not some weird cheap filler. So understand that, and it even puts pomegranate in it. So you have to understand that you can't just be looking at like what the supplement bottle says. You've also got to be asking yourself like what's really in it. When you're looking at a human, don't just look at the halo. Ask yourself what's in this. What does this really do? And then audit that. Likewise in situations. You'll see this where people go out to a bar club. What's the purpose of a bar club? The purpose of a bar club is to lower your cortisol, to laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh and have fun, and so on and so forth. That's the purpose. And it's also to meet people. It's to make connections. It's to make, networking and romantic connections, and maybe a wild, adventurous connection that same night that you're both having a lot of fun with, whatever it is. That's the purpose. But you'll see people walk in there and they start walking laps around the bar club, and they go to get a drink and they wonder who's there. And then they start getting scared and they start getting anxiety, and then they don't want to talk to people and they start making excuses and yada, 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 yada. It's like, why do you value your time so low that you're doing that? Is your time that worthless to you? It's like people who would take the wrong supplement, or people who are eating the wrong foods, or people who are just engaging with other people and it's just not the right people. At a high level, people value their time. They see what their own value is, and then they can look at other people and also see what the value is, and then just kind of ride it from there, is the basic idea of it, okay? This is the basic skill set of it. I think we're coming back on I think that's the cottage there, so we'll kind of come back in now before it gets too dark. So the basic idea is you're seeing past the labels, you're seeing past the BS, you're seeing past the emotions, you're seeing past the mental clutter, and that's in yourself and hyper concentrating the value, and likewise in other people and situations, and seeing where their value is, and then putting them to work in a way that makes sense, and just doing this continually. I'd say the best way I could put it to you is that some people in life, if it's like they're eating a cow, they're eating the ribeye, or they're eating the very choice cuts of the cow. Other people are eating, the non-choice cuts, right? The parts that are not good. They're eating the filth. Some people in dating, they date the best and most attractive people, at their peak and peak age and peak attractiveness. And other people are kind of getting them after the fact and later on, and they're getting the argumentative version of them and the version of them that creates drama. Remember that, anybody who you'd ever date, there's two different versions of them. There's a dramatic and not at their prime version, and then there's a peaceful, sweet, in their prime version. Somebody who knows how to gain the value in life understands that I want the in their peak and nice, sweet version, not the bad version. And if they see themselves getting to a point where they're not getting that version, they get out of there very, very, very quickly because they understand what value is, okay? So this is just a basic core value for your time, not being around people that are gonna create drama, not being around people that are idiots. And I wish them the best. I love all people, but some people behave as idiots. We all do to some extent, but some of us more than others. They're not going to be around gossip. Gossip is trash. It's useless. They're not going to try to sit there self-soothing themselves and feeding themselves with narratives that are not helpful. They're just going right to the value. Where's the value here? Where's the best books? Where's the best Everything. So look, we'll head back up in the cottage and we'll chat a little bit more, and then we'll wrap this up. One last quick shot, we'll wrap it up. So I'm gonna ask you a funny question. You've probably seen fights by Conor McGregor, correct? These are very trendy fights, and he's an incredible entertainer, classic. At the same time, have you ever watched Muhammad Ali's fights? It's funny to think about that, isn't it? You're more likely to watch the new sports game, the game today, but have you seen the classic sports games? Have you ever looked up, say, Deion Sanders running down the field? People that are classic. You've probably read new trendy books, but have you read classic books? Have you gone back and looked at the best literature ever written? You look at the latest self-help teacher, which is great, I love that. But have you looked at the classics in self-development? There's probably many different self-development teachers that I could throw at you that you've never looked at. So this is this idea that people who understand real value, they go right to the best. They go to things that are that have stood the test of time, and they don't just get sucked into the latest trend of the day. That's kind of what I'm trying to leave you with, is that, you know, the latest thing of the day is usually a bunch of hype. You know, the ultimate example would be, say, the app TikTok right now, right? We're shooting this in 2021, and there's an app called TikTok, and it's just, what is the latest viral thing? What is that at its core? It's people that are operating in a sheep-like mindset. All they're looking at is, what are other people looking at? What are other people looking at? That's basically the base foundation, rather than what has stood the test of time and what is going to change your life. So life at its core, it could be amazing and have this broad range of experiences, or it could be a very narrow life to where, you know, you spend most of your life in kind of being a battery in the matrix, and you've got to make a choice of what that's going to look like. And that's going to be the final point I'm going to make here. When you think about modern society right now, do you think that you actually benefit from modern society compared to if you were living as a prehistoric person? Even if they were to only live to be 18 years old and you live to be 110, do you think that your life's actually better? I'd say that if you were to audit the lives of most people that I see, I think they would have been better off with none of this, if I'm being real with you. There's very, very few people that actually benefit from modern society, in my personal view, and I'll tell you why. Because your life lived in the outdoors, doing what's natural to you, doing what we did for, I mean, what is it, hundreds of millions of years, doing that, what we're built for, that was probably a lot more fun than the modern society that most of us live in. So if you're even going to live in modern society, another thing that you should be asking is, like, what's the value of this? Like, you keep saying, I'll be happy when, or I'll do the things I want to do when, or I'll start that business when, or whatever it is. You keep saying that, you're going to start, you know, dating the person who you want when, or having the dating life that you want when, et cetera, et cetera. But when is that actually going to start? So even looking at modern society and saying, like, okay, if I'm not going to live in the great outdoors, under the sun, under the stars, the beauty of life, the magic of life, if I'm not going to do that, well then, what's the actual value of this? To me, a really big part of it is the fact that we have modern travel, the fact that we, you know, there are roads and airplanes and things like that that we can use to go all over the world and see a broad range of different things. It's the fact that we do have access to the best knowledge in the world that's been curated. These are the things that all of a sudden do make it worth living. Things like understanding nutrition that is completely ridiculous so we can have massive vitality. The fact that we can also meet other people who are among the best in the world, or, you know, the fact that many of the most attractive people in the world congregate in certain cities and we can go there and meet them and date them and have fun with them. That's where the actual value is. It's having the, you know, the wisdom of the ages at your fingertips and utilizing it. So if you're just going through life as a derper and just being a battery for the matrix, realize that there's other people that are living these incredible lives and you're basically just a power supply for them, which is pretty crazy, right? And you see many people who do live as a power supply and they sort of worship celebrity. You know, they're more likely to worship, say, a pop singer than they are somebody who traveled the entire world on a ship a couple hundred years ago and lived the greatest adventures and pushed themselves to the extreme and live life at the edge. So start seeking out role models of people who are really living a life that you would admire. Start to model that, start to want to kind of take after that in certain aspects of the parts that you do like, and you don't have to take all of it. Again, it's like, you know, it's like you're eating the cow. You want to get the ribeye and leave all the crap. Audit where the value is. Have that ability to look at any life philosophy or person or thing and see where the value is. Make a choice to give to others, to be charitable and to give your energy freely at times, but do so from a framework of, you know, maybe say 10% of your life is that charity that you do, but then you're also wanting to build yourself up and make yourself strong so that when you do give that 10% charity, it is 1,000 times more, because however strong you've made yourself is in direct proportion to what it is that you can give. Okay, but always give, because that's a beautiful thing too. That's also a part of life. Giving is a part of life and is a part of that value of life. So I love you very much. I hope this helped. It was just a quick little idea I want to share. I've been on the road now for couple months. We've been shooting videos out here, and we've got a beautiful backlog coming, and I've been shooting all week, and I'll be back to shooting tomorrow, so we'll be getting back at it soon. Let me know what you think of the ideas. Peace.